Before we start, I'm likely going to butcher a lot of Thai pronunciations and names, so apologies on that. Dek Ho, or Dom, known in the Western world, was a 2006 Thai horror and coming-of-age story from writer-director Songgyos Sukmakanan. It did not state the time period of the backdrop, but from the architecture of the school, it was evidently stuck in years further than the period of the production of this movie. There was a running joke from me that the comparison with the residents of this all-boys boarding school to my basic military days are not out of this world, except the beds and the bath in my army camp were much more humane to a bunch of late teenage boys than those poor Thai boys in this movie. From the start, we saw our young protagonist Thorn being ushered to the creepy-looking boarding school. It was evident that the boy was in the dark about it. After coaxing by his dear mother, pestered by the younger brother who thought the school was fun to stay in, and basically been bribed into the system by his own father, who had a hairpiece like a Lego figurine, Thorn basically had to swallow all the misery in a scant attempt to adapt to his new living environment. So you are the new guy into a dormitory filled with boys trying to exert their dominance. You can expect hazing and bullying like what we had in school, or worse still, in prison. The boarding school definitely felt like a prison to these boys. That particular scene of Thorn trying his best not to be defeated, but could do little to scupper tears from flowing down his cheeks, was so heart-wrenching, and as audience, sympathy was overflowing. Thorn would be the locked-on target for an unlikely quartet of boys, as they felt like telling ghost stories of the decrepit school compound as a form of orientation, once again reminiscence of my time in the army. The ghost stories were easy to scar Thorn, and visiting the latrine that very night was not going to be a walk in the park. He definitely had some unexplained experiences, as the horror elements were on point by this juncture of the movie. The staunchly emotionless, disciplinary headmistress Miss Prani, who had a record which skipped for years, seems to have an underlying secret that linked to some grievous history of the school. Thorn eventually made a close confidant in a boy called Vichian, and time in this dispensary of misery became more tolerable, and the movie slowly inched towards a coming-of-age story as we had flashback on the deep misunderstanding Thorn had with his dopey father. I thought the story was building up into a mystery shrouding the school management and all the uneasy ongoings in the past, except that was not really the main story the director and the scriptwriters were concerned about. It was just a minute plot element for what was going to transpire in the climax. I did felt a bit let down, and things seemed to be dragging its feet for the crucial part of the plot. Director Sukmakanan was one of the 6 directors that made Fan Chan, or My Girl, a saccharine coming-of-age comedy from 2003 that took the Thai box office by storm. Looking at his filmography post-Dom, he really did not dabble into the horror genre, perhaps it was not his forte. Speaking of Fan Chan, young Charlie Trirat had an eye-catching performance in that movie and reunited with Sukmakanan with another solid performance as Thorn in this movie as well. Unlike his director, Trirat had his feet in more horror films later on his acting career, as we saw him in one segment in Phobia 2. In the role of Miss Prani, we had the seasoned actress Chintara Sukapanatana, who played Trin in Good Morning Vietnam opposite Robin Williams. Ultimately, it was barely a horror movie, but there was a nice nostalgia element, and if you appreciate a likable coming-of-age feature, Dom was not a bad choice. The first act of this movie certainly gave me a feeling of Guillermo del Toro's The Devil's Backbone, but it really could not measure up to that. Dom is a light 7 out of 10 from me. Please like and share if you enjoyed more Asian horror features to be covered on this channel, and subscribe for the latest updates. My previous review was on Zelda Williams' Lisa Frankenstein. Like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, these movies are sort of linked with the association of Robin Williams. Now I'm thinking if I should keep my pee in, as I'm recording this in the middle of the night in the midst of the lunar 7th month. Help!